Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're with us today. So we're going to be talking about adoption, the complexities of adoption, the joys, and also how to support parents in this adoption process. We have an expert, Dr. Melody Aguayo. She holds a master's in marriage and family therapy and a Ph.D. in psychology. Her doctoral and postdoctoral studies have all emphasized the impacts of developmental trauma. She is trained in the Circle of Serenity, trust-based relational intervention, and Theraplay. Her coaching practice emphasizes on educating organizations, professions, and families on the impacts of early trauma in the development of cognitive, neurological, relational, and behavioral. For over 10 years, she has worked specifically with this population. She herself is an adoptive parent of 2 children, now adults, one with significant special needs, including complex developmental trauma disorder, extreme mental illness, and substance abuse disorder. She approaches all of her audiences with the expertise of a professional and the endless compassion of a mother. She has pursued her doctorate because of her son and he continues to inspire her to learn and grow professionally and personally. She has written articles for the focus on the family and fostering families today. She is a notable key speaker who has spoken nationwide to many notable organizations, CAFO, Vanderbilt's Neuroscience Symposium at CIA, Empowered to Connect, Wyoming Psychological Association's annual conference, and many others. With that, let's welcome Dr. Melody.
So excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we're going to be talking about a topic that really means something to me because as we were getting ready for this interview, you know that I have some close family that has been adopted. And so this is something that really means something special to me. So I'm so glad you're with us today to talk about raising kids who have been adopted.
Thank you. I'm excited about this. I'm an adoptive mom of 2. So this is a passion of mine.
Yes. Okay. So how, obviously adopting kids probably brought you into this topic even more so, but what kind of has led you down this path to being a huge support for families that have adopted children?
So I brought home my kids when our son was 15 months old and our daughter was 4 months old. And I was 25 years old. They were our first
young.
and
Yes.
last children. Yes. And I really had no qualms about being a mom at all. I just thought I was going to be a fantastic mother and have fantastic results. My mom had 5 kids and she was a very gentle parent and we all turned out okay. And so I really believe that when I brought my children home, their distress would end and healing would begin. And instead, our son's distress just continued and our distress began. And I knew immediately that there was something very, 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 very broken in my child. And he would eat things that weren't food. He would never sleep laying down. He was too terrorized, honestly, too afraid. He would only sleep in tiny bursts of time, maybe 45 minutes. And then 4 hours later, he would sleep 45 minutes, but never a full night.
Oh my gosh.
And
you were exhausted too. Holy smokes.
Exhausted. I don't even remember that first year. We were so exhausted. So it was just hard getting him to eat anything that was nutritious was hard, but then we also couldn't get, he would fall asleep with food in his mouth. We couldn't get the food out of his mouth once it was in his mouth because when babies have been starved, they don't have pockets. So how do they keep their food, right? They just keep it in their cheeks. So there was just a lot of things that did not feel typical toddler to me that I brought over and over again to professionals, and they just really downplayed it as I was a new mom. He was clearly bright and beautiful, and he is and always has been those things. But he was also extremely impaired by complex developmental trauma. And so I started pursuing my doctorate really, I'm embarrassed to say, to fix him, because I thought things like that were possible at 25. I like to think my brain wasn't fully developed yet,
Yeah,
although it
fair.
should have been by 25. And, along the journey, just realized that one, that's not possible. And two, that was never my job. I can't
Mhm.
fix something that I didn't break. And that impacted really the entire brain and nervous system. And so my job was to learn how to manage it and to connect with my child in spite of it.
Yeah. Wow. That's hard.
Yeah.
And I imagine there's a lot of parents listening that are like, yes, like I get this. So incredibly difficult. Like she understands what it's like to live the life that I've lived in this journey of raising a kid that I, didn't birth. And so, yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Hey.
And a lot of parents that I work with, they're experiencing all the sacrifice of parenting without any of the soft parts of parenting.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's hard. We do a lot for our children, for that smile, for them to reach for us, for them to want us. And
Mhm.
when attachment interruptions happen, we don't get those parts of parenting.
Yeah. And I think, there are kids out there that I have seen and I know that exist that have not had the same complex trauma through adoption, but a lot of times there are reasons why families are not able to keep those children that they birthed or they've been removed from their home or whatever their circumstances are. And so there is likely something that didn't go quite right. And
Yes.
so there can be disruptions, and that attachment in those early years, as we know, studying attachment, are so imperative to how they trust and understand the world and understand what is good and healthy for them and maybe what's not, or maybe they haven't learned that part. And so part of our job is to teach them that, but it can be really difficult when you're kind of fighting the wiring that has wired them in one particular way to help them to maybe be open or to heal some of the parts to be able to like accept love and support and care and nutrition and those
Yeah.
kind of things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Babies are either born ready to protect themselves and fight, or
Mm-hmm.
they're born ready to learn or connect and
Yeah.
connect. And so if you have a baby that was born ready to protect, avoid, and fight, then you're really facing a lifetime of challenges, of trust challenges, of
Mm-hmm.
learning challenges, because that brain is not primed for learning, it's primed for survival. And so it is very complex. There is a degree of influence. Trauma impacts everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't know how it will impact each child, right? So
Sure.
some kids just really amaze me by how well they do despite their trauma history. But in general, even those kids, we are going to see evidence of those high levels of cortisol in
Mm-hmm.
their regulation or learning states.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if this is a brief answer to this question, but you said there are some kids that are born that are ready to, accept, trust, learn,
Mhm.
and be in that place where they can maybe accept where we're at as parents, that we want to love and nurture them. And then there are kids who are wired to fight. Why does that happen?
Because in utero, if there is too much cortisol, if birth mom is stressed out, and in
Mm-hmm.
adoption, I cannot imagine a birth mom not being stressed out. Those
Mm-hmm.
situations that lead to adoption choices or not, sometimes when a child's removed, full of stress hormones, and those
Mm-hmm.
stress hormones literally bathe the baby's brain. And
Mm-hmm.
and the HPA axis is what moderates cortisol, but it doesn't even start to develop and create like cortisol boundaries. It's almost like a dam. Imagine a dam that is built in the brain specifically for stress hormones, but it doesn't even start being built until the child is 6 months old. So that's 15 months where the brain is literally being bathed by stress hormones,
Mm-hmm.
and it's neurotoxic. And what I didn't realize before I adopted my children was that those stress hormones stay high for life. Now, there are ways
Whoa.
to decrease, there are ways
Mm-hmm.
combat that, there is always something we can do.
Sure.
But we have to also understand that they stay high for life.
Mm-hmm. Which I think most parents don't understand that part. But this can also happen when you're not in a situation where you're putting your kid up for adoption or it has been taken. Like if you're in a domestic violence situation or other stressors within your life, those hormones can also impact your kid too.
And I work with children who are not adopted, who whose parents were undergoing extreme duress during the pregnancy. Like maybe their mother died during the pregnancy. That's extreme duress.
Yes.
Maybe they got in a car accident and broke their back and were in a hospital bed for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And these are all things that, yes, you're right. Going through a divorce or moving, babies are just so fragile to our stress hormones. And actually, some researchers believe that stress hormones impact the brain as much or more than any other substance except for alcohol.
Wow.
Which is crazy, right? Everybody's worried about drugs and nicotine and that sort of thing. And when a person can check that no to all of those exposures, and the child can still be born with a fighting, avoiding, protecting brain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That makes me, I'm like, okay, now what do we need to do? Right? Like, I'm like, okay, there's something, right? Like, how can we help support moms who are pregnant? Because I think that's also stressful just in general, right? I mean, whether your pregnancy is lovely or not, but it's like, if you're worried about putting food on the table or getting to work, or what if you have a headache that you don't have sick leave, and just like all the other things of life, right, that can happen, then it's thinking about how those things impact you too. But then having this other stressor of like, I don't want to mess up my kid, or I don't want to do something that hurts my baby, and thinking about that pressure too. Oh, I'm glad that I'm done having babies.
Yeah.
Like it just makes me feel like, okay.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So from your clinical experience, because you see a lot of families that have adopted children, not only that, but then also your personal experience, what do you think are the most common emotional or developmental challenges that adopted children face? Excuse me, especially those who have experienced early adversity.
Yeah. So this is, again, it's a matter of degree. So you can, you might recognize a few of these things, but not feel like they're so problematic, or feel like, a few supports in school kind of are able to continue to move your child forward. But then there's the kids that just struggle moving forward no matter what, that you're just kind of in survival mode the whole time. But the areas of the brain, so like the brain stem, this part of the brain develops through movement, and movements that start in the womb and should not be erratic or frightened. It should be, a relaxing, peaceful place.
Sure.
And then your primitive infant reflexes should be fully integrated by the time you're 1.5 years old. So another thing I see with a lot of the kids that I work with, if they go to an OT, is they don't have any integrated reflexes. So that's the brain. Stem.
Do you explain what that means when your reflexes are integrated?
Yes. So the moro reflex, for instance, is your startle reflex. Mm-hmm. And when I send my kiddos to be evaluated by a movement specialist, I would say 98% of them have never integrated their moro reflex, meaning they startle all the time. They're in constant startle mode. Mm-hmm. Now, for a baby, it's meant to be protective, because babies can't do anything except startle and hold on to things and suck and draw their little legs in if they're cold. So it's meant to be, all these reflexes are to keep babies alive. Mm-hmm. But if they stay unintegrated, if they're not integrated, they affect learning, they affect mood regulation, they affect cause and effect thinking. They affect things like aggression. Typical kids, neurotypical kids, are not aggressive past the age of 5. Mm-hmm. But our kids often are. That's often one of the big things we struggle with. The circadian rhythm, sleep and wake cycles are affected by that kind of thing. So, it starts with the earliest brain development, and then it just kind of moves up. And so another thing that people don't understand about kids with complex developmental trauma issues is that things can get harder as they get older. Because as our brains are organizing on a disorganized foundation, the difference between us and our peers just keeps growing and growing. And that's really hard for parents, particularly, and it happens with complex developmental trauma and substance abuse. So if a child has been exposed to substances in utero, I usually start seeing those kids at about the age of 8, and then it gets more and more frequent. Because their behaviors increase in intensity as the other parts of the brain are supposed to be developing, but are not developing on a good foundation. And so then we start seeing that that children are not learning from their mistakes. So, a typical first grader, a typical 4 to 6 year old is going to steal something once or twice. They're going to get in huge trouble. They're going to be so ashamed, and they're never going to do it again. For a parent raising a trauma impacted child, that feels like the dream. Like, because my son stole for years and years and years, despite consequences, and didn't seem to learn from it. Right. So like the consequences did not impact his learning because he didn't have cause and effect thinking. Because he had the moral development of a 2-year-old, and 2-year-olds say in their brains, if you're not here, it wasn't wrong. And it's hard for us to understand that as parents, but when we understand it, we can have a lot of compassion for our kids. It's not easy to be them.
Well, because ideally you would be learning from those things, and they don't want to be repeating the same mistakes ideally either, but it's like, I'm always in trouble. And I imagine they're feeling like I'm a bad kid.
Yes, absolutely. It's just so hard to be them. And with them having really invisible disabilities, the expectation of them is always more than they can provide, especially as they get bigger and older. And so, we know that kids with complex developmental trauma, if they have the full diagnosis, which our son did, they're about half of their chronological age emotionally. So, we expect a 14-year-old to act like a 14-year-old, and they're acting like they're 7. They're not getting a lot of props for that.
No. Excuse me. And I imagine that's also that, like, the parents are also thinking, like, it should be better now, right? Like, what in the world?
Everyone thinks it should be better now. Yes. And everybody,
the school too, of thinking like, okay, we've been dealing with this for so long.
Yeah. And when the school, and schools don't understand when the child is needing additional supports every year. It's hard to go into IEP meetings and not feel like a failure as a parent. I was always crying at those meetings, and after and before, and because I kept asking for more supports and more supports, and it just got harder every year. In fact, we finally just pulled him out in middle school because he was just kind of living in school suspension, which wasn't really an education.
No. Yeah. And it's hard because there's a part of us that like expects that the educators know, right? Like what to do. And I don't know that they know what to do either. Right. So they're operating from a place of trying to help, but then also they don't know how to help. And it's frustrating for them. It's frustrating for the parents, frustrating for the kid. And we're just kind of doing this cycle sometimes. So I can imagine that gets incredibly disheartening and feeling like, oh, man, like we're just failing here.
Yes, for sure. I mean, we got calls from the school every day, from the time our child was in kindergarten until he stopped going to school.
Oh my gosh. So the phone number on the school, I mean, it gives me anxiety when my kid's school calls, but it's normally because like they have a fever, they're sick, or sometimes it's something benign, but it gives you anxiety. I'm sure every day you're like, just dreading, like when your phone is ringing.
I had the Jaws theme number, theme song for the school's phone number, just because that's how I felt. So I wanted to be congruent.
I appreciate that. Yes. Is there anything else that you think parents should be prepared to look for? So like in terms of this part of like, okay, so I've adopted this child.
Yes.
Is there things that I should be looking for in terms of like, maybe I don't feel like they've had complex trauma or I don't know, right? Like sometimes we don't get the luxury of having a backstory when we adopt our kids. And so understanding that piece, like what else should they be looking for?
Yeah. So a regulated child is calm and alert, and a child's jobs are to learn and play. So if you do not see those qualities in your child most of the time, are they learning well? And this includes school learning. It really does. Are they learning? But it also includes things like, are they learning to wash their hands after they wipe their bottoms? Are they learning to put the toothbrush back in the cup holder? Or are they not learning anything, right? I can remember telling the pediatrician when my son was 5, I have taught him nothing. And I have been consistent almost all the time. I don't know what's wrong with me or him. Right? So are they learning? Are they learning? Because usually, again, past the age of 5, our active teaching in parenting is not very often for neurotypical kids.
Yeah.
The rest is mostly they learn vicariously. So that's another thing we look at for our kids. Are they learning vicariously? Do they have enough social attunement to want to stop doing things that don't give them positive consequences, right? Are they curious and not controlling? A lot of parents will say, oh, my kid is so curious. They're asking me all the time, why are we going this direction? What are we having for dinner? That's not curiosity. Those are controlling questions. I mean, curious. Do they ask you, what did you like to play with when you were little, mommy? Because curiosity is a regulated state. So a child should be able to have curiosity, and they should be able to learn, and they should be able to learn from their mistakes. And if those things are not happening, then immediately at least my little alarm bells go off. But I think people should reach out to a professional who understands trauma immediately when they bring a child home. Immediately, because there are early intervention things that you can do in infancy to decrease the risks of later behaviors.
Love that. I mean, I think having positive things too to look at is so impactful. And obviously some people listening to this, they're like, we're past the infancy stage, right?
Yeah.
Like we've made it past that part. We survived through here, but we didn't do those things. Is there still hope for kids that are older and past the infancy part?
Absolutely. I mean, the brain is constantly changing. I think that one thing that we have to understand as parents is that, and we have to kind of let go of the expectation that our kids are going to change when they really, really struggle with regulation. Now, we can keep working towards that change, but the personal agency has to be with our own change. And so, yes, there's always something we can do. There's always something we have control over, but it's not always our kids. And people who are listening understand that. If your kid is 15 years old and they have found their power, there's probably not much you can do. But there's some things you can do. You can make sure that they don't have access to the car keys. You can still, keep them safe in some ways. You don't have to give them a phone and that sort of thing. But once a child finds their power, you really have to focus on your own opportunities for growth, because if you just focus on what you can't control about your child, it will do you in.
Yeah. Okay. So talk to me. I'm thinking about families that we've talked kind of about early trauma, but there's also neglect that can happen. There's also multiple placements. How do those things also impact a kid's ability to attach to their caregivers? And are there things that parents can do to nurture an attachment after those things have happened?
Yes. So yes, I think it was Karen Purvis that said neglect makes a child feel invisible, and abuse makes a child feel unlovable. And I think those are both very, very true. And so, and a lot of times kids have both of those feelings. And what we can do is we want to go back to the roots of you are lovable and you are seen. Mm-hmm. And so we are constantly sending our children those messages. And in order to do that, and this is the hard part, we have to let go of the expectation that their behaviors are going to change. And we have to see them and love them exactly where they are right now, without a single change in their behaviors, because we have to understand that actually their behaviors can't change until they feel seen and loved. Mm-hmm. And that's a big ask for parents, because I think we are taught to reward good behavior and not reward misbehavior, but it's impairment. It's a lack of skills. It's not that they're just trying to be naughty. Trust me, kids want to make parents happy.
Yeah, they
do. And so we have to be parents that our children can make happy, even if they're not doing the right thing. Like, can our children still delight in us? Can we delight in our children? Do our eyes sparkle when they come in the room, or are all we doing when we interact with them is saying, no, stop, quit, don't? I was that parent. I had to learn to stop trying to fix my kid before I could connect with my kid. And my child had some very severe, even doing this exclusively for 15 years, I'd say my kid is in the top 2% of really complex cases of a child who's had every intervention possible and still struggles so much. But there is so much you can do as a parent. You just have to focus on your personal agency, your community, and also remembering that when you make a decision for your family, that every person in the family should be equally important. Not just your child in crisis, because once families start getting out of balance, it's really hard to restore that. Yep. And it's not good for anyone.
Yeah. And that's a hard part. I think I see that in my practice, where there's one kid that's in crisis and then the other kids don't get the same attention, time. And I get it. I mean, because you're like, literally this part is on fire.
Yes.
And so I feel like I have to attend to that. Yes. But then the other kids don't get that time and attention. And then, it's hard to balance those pieces.
Hard. Yeah. Yes. And we have to encourage adoptive parents too. This is a long game. I have lots of parents that will say things like, well, I only have 3 more years to, if they have a 15-year-old, I only have 3 more years. And no, parenting doesn't have an expiration date. You have the rest of this child's life to be their parent, to invest in them. It's almost like I was redoing some furniture that I got, and layers and layers and layers of paint, old paint, not way more layers than I thought it had. I thought it was going to be just this easy piece to refinish. It was going to look great. And now I'm like 7 days later, and I've got like 12 pieces of 12 liquids and sanders and strippers and my compressor that I'm trying to wash. Anyways, it's almost like you have to focus on one layer of trauma at a time. And then you have to understand it's the long game. So sometimes you have to be willing to put that away for a bit and just enjoy what you've done, and then focus on one other thing, or focus on another child in the home, or focus on your marriage. Because when you're looking at a crisis that lasts longer than 6 months, if a family's focus stays on one child, the whole family falls apart. And these crises can last for years. We've been parenting for our son for 21 years now. And more often than not, particularly in the past 8 or 9 years, he's been in crisis.
Yeah.
I used to say we've been in crisis, but I'm learning that we don't have to be in crisis when he is.
Yeah. Oh, that's hard.
It is hard. It's very hard. And it feels wrong as a parent, but let me tell you, it's right, because I'll be his greatest resource when he's 40, just like I'm his greatest resource now. And if I allow myself to just sink into his crisis, I will not be available.
Yeah. That is wise. Yeah. Well, and I was thinking about, something that I think all families experience is other people outside of your home offering suggestions about how you should do it. If you just need to spank, you need to be meaner, you need to, whatever it is, like whatever punishment they felt like, just straighten kids up back whenever normally it seems to be older people, but I think, there are some younger people who are very judgmental towards that part too. What do you suggest that families do? Like understanding that this is a long game,
Yes.
right? And ideally we would come into this like knowing, like we would already know this ahead of time. And like maybe we've thought it, but we don't maybe really understand what it's going to be like until we're in it. So how do we help other family members or other people that are maybe part of our support system that have a different perspective to understand?
Yeah, it's really hard. I think there are some people who are willing to learn, and there are some people who are not.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't recommend cutting off relationships with families who love our kids, even if they don't have the patience or disposition to manage our kids, because it's a long game. It's a long game, right? So maybe at 8, they can't have a sleepover with your child because they're too hyper, but they're the ones showing up at juvie when they're 17. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't recommend cutting off relationships with important people to you who love your kid, even if they don't understand. But if they're not important to you, then you have to let go of a lot of relationships. You really do, because you want to be around people who believe the best in you, and believe the best of your kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because blaming is the easy way to resolve issues, but it's not the right way, and it's never productive.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to understand as parents, give ourselves grace. Like I look at my parenting journey as other parents have like an archery target that's huge and it's 15 feet away, and they just have to practice hitting the target, but the target never moves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like my kid is like a moving, spinning target, and it's tiny, and sometimes it bites and it runs away.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like trying to figure out, how to do it. And parents who don't have a moving target, they do think it's simple. They don't
Mm-hmm.
understand better. They read a book and it changed everything. That's how they have a target that doesn't move.
Mm-hmm.
We can read 100 books and change nothing. And so, we have to have compassion for ourselves and not compare our children to other people's children, which is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard. There's a grief
Yes.
that continues across my child's lifespan that I don't think will ever go away.
Mm-hmm.
The grief when you watch other people being celebrated for things they do well, and you realize that no one ever celebrates your child anymore, because for him to do well might just mean he hasn't been in jail for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the kind of thing you celebrate with with other people.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, and I was just thinking you and I are in sync here, because I was like, there's grief, right? I think as parents, just in general, there is,
so much.
we have this thought of how things are going to be, and then there's reality. But I think when you have something more complex, right? Like you have a kid who is not neurotypical. You have a kid who has experienced a lot of trauma. There is going to be grief, and it's okay. I think oftentimes parents will say to me, I feel guilty that I like feel bad. And I'm like, that's just normal, right?
Yeah.
Like it's okay for you to grieve that part. I mean, it's not that we blame anybody, but it's okay for you to feel that feeling and sit with that feeling and write about that feeling. And then, figure out how to get from where you are to where you'd like to be, which is probably connected and appreciating what you do have in your kid and what is going well this week, even if it's the most tiny little baby thing of like, I saw them brush their teeth.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And to stay in the moment. Like I've learned, we have had so many truly near-death experiences that it's almost like my brain had in order to survive all the crises, I had to determine, what, it's not up to me when whether he dies or lives. So all I can do is focus on what's in front of me today. How can I help him today? How can I connect with him today? How can I not miss a single chance to hug him?
Mm-hmm.
How can I make sure that he feels and, senses my love and presence and connection? And those are the things that we have to focus on. And how can I make sure that I'm healthy enough to support him, down the road? So always this active intention to bless our children, but understanding that all we have is this moment. And honestly, joy lives in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
If we think too far into the future, we're just going to be undone. We are. We know what our kids, we really do know our kids. Everything I was afraid of would happen when my child was 4 happened. And we survived it. And we are surviving it. And so, just one day at a time is the only place we can find joy, is right here. We can't, think too far ahead.
Yeah. What are you doing to keep yourself together? Because I mean, I imagine like there are moments where even with all the skills I have, I sometimes still lose my cool with my kids, and thinking about like the complexness of this circumstance for you. Like, how are you keeping yourself grounded? What are you doing that is helping you to have success?
Yeah. So I practice, I believe in making time and space for my grief. And I allow it. I invite it. I let it come. I spend, because I think that is I think if I'm not, I've noticed if I'm not grieving well, I'm also not living joyfully. So when it comes, I let it come, and I don't shy away from the tears or the time that it's going to take or the mourning or whatever, so I let it come. And then also connecting to a community that actually understands, where there is no blame, where there is no shame. And that includes no blame or shame towards my child. That's not helpful. It's not helpful to connect to communities where our neurologically impaired children are blamed for not knowing how to do relationships, for not knowing how to be loyal, because really that's the lesson of year 3. If you look at Brian Newfield's, which I love the book, I forget the book but anyways, he talks about the 5 attachment lessons of the first 5 years. The first one is to be near those you love, of year 1. The second one is to be like those you love, to imitate. The third year is the year of loyalty. The 4th year is you want to be dear to those who love you. And the 5th year is you want to share that dearness. And then neurotypical parents are mostly done. It's amazing to me, but it's true.
Whoa.
They're mostly done if they have those 5 lessons. Our kiddos often don't learn the lessons of year 2 and year 3. So they don't learn to want to be like us. Remember, that's a connection thing. That's an imitation thing. I want to be like my mom and dad. It is very unusual, but usual in the adoption world, to have a child who's 10 years old who doesn't want to be anything like you. In fact, they might even decide they don't, if the family worships God, they might decide they're atheists. That's not neurotypical. Children should want to be like their parents up until a certain age. And then the lesson of loyalty. And this is the sad thing, because even children who are in abusive homes get through those lessons better than children with interrupted attachment. They are more loyal. Children who live in abusive homes have more sense of attachment and regulation than kids who have had interrupted attachment. And that doesn't, I know that's not fair, guys. It's not, but it's also not our fault, and it's not our kids' fault.
Yeah.
When they changed caretakers, they decided they can't be loyal. Like, that's not a safe thing. So we, as parents, we need to understand that the fact that our children are not loyal, like they might talk badly about you. They might, you're at a picnic with your family and they're trying to join somebody else's family picnic. I mean, all those things are very common for our kiddos. They're just trying to stay alive, and they don't understand the lessons of year 2 and 3.
That's really helpful. Is there anything else that you do that you feel like really keeps you grounded? You said a community. You have a community online. Can you talk about that briefly?
Yes. So if you go to my website, drmelodyaguayo.com, we have a Facebook group, and it's relatively small, so everybody still gets plenty of attention, where I do a monthly training very specific to our kiddos, and with practical tips. I do weekly questions and answers. And then twice a month, we do a parent group support call, and all of that for $50. And those parent group support calls are live, and they really are designed for us as parents to find our own agency and not get lost in the crisis of our children.
Yeah. I love that you're doing this.
Yeah. Yes. So it's really all about, I really want that time to be all about the parents, because I think that we spend, another way that I've stayed alive is, we stopped investing all of our resources into his healing and started investing some resources into our marriage, into our other child's healing, into fun again. Just starting to have some balance again and understand, again, this is a long game. I can love my child well and be investing in my marriage right now. It's hard for parents to do that when they feel like their kids are drowning. It is. I know, because I've been there.
Well, and I think, I think about that and think, I'm raising 3 of 4 for sure ADHD kids. One kid also has autism. So I think, we're in the neurodiversity area, right?
Yes.
And so I think about, the importance of my husband and I having a solid foundation for our kids, because if, we were talking, my husband and I, the other day about like our bedroom and our space being like serenity, about being peaceful. And, sometimes we lock our kids out of our room. Like we won't, I don't want them to destroy my room when I have made my bed and it looks exactly the way I want. It's not that they can't come in. It's not that they're not welcome, but they're welcome like with me, because that way, when things have been so chaotic and we can have like our own space to escape to. And that has been like, having that realization has been so imperative for us. But I know it's hard. Like when everything feels like it's on fire.
I love that. And that's one of the things, that's one of the first things I recommend to parents too. I'm like, where is your space? I don't care where it is, but it has to be yours. And the kids have to know it's yours. It can be a spot on the porch under a tree. And they have to know, when I'm here, this is my time. Yeah. This is my space. And there's lots of practical strategy. We can all learn how to manage our children better. And I believe we can all have peaceful homes. And that's something that I never thought we would have, but we did. We did. And so now our son's behaviors didn't change so much. They were always challenging, but we were able to learn to, what can we do to control the structure so that we can prevent this predictable pattern of behavior. And so, that's something when I coach parents, we come up with practical strategies of things that you can do to help you manage and even thrive despite your child's behaviors.
Love that. Love that. I think we all need that, but especially when it feels like everything's on fire, and it is really on fire in front of you. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So we've kind of talked about, there are disruptions in trust that can happen when our kids are adopted, not because they're adopted, but because of the home or the circumstances beforehand. And also like lacking emotional safety. Are there things that parents can do that will help to amplify trust and emotional safety with them and their children?
There are so many things you can do. I think sometimes parents do need professional guidance though, because sometimes like a lot of people come to me and they'll be like, well, my child is really well attached because they won't let me out of their sight. So I don't go anywhere. I don't close my door. I don't, and literally like I have so many parents come to me with this, and for that parent, the opportunity for growth is, oh, honey, we need separation, and then we need to come back together. Because that's the lesson the child needs to learn, right? Is that you will come back, that they can sit in their rooms and have like room time for 20 minutes, and that you're still in the kitchen, that you haven't disappeared. So we work on object permanence for that kid. And in order to do that, we have to create some discomfort. And so like sometimes parents think that they're doing the right thing, but they're giving their child too much control, and it shows, because when a dysregulated child is controlling the home, it is chaos. So I think taking control of the structure back and determining what is one thing we're going to work on in this season. And that whole example that I gave is a big thing that I work on with parents. And it's interesting because the first few times a child will get extremely dysregulated. Maybe they'll break the door down. That's how dysregulated. But that is where we have to start. And then we have to, walk through, your mom was there. I mean, you heard her and you were talking to her and, and that sort of thing. And so like, we have to figure out what our child's opportunity for growth is. But the structure of the home, with the right structure, you don't need to say no, stop, quit, don't. Anything in the home that is creating conflict for a season needs to leave. So for us, we never had video games. We never even had a smart TV. It created too much conflict.
Yeah.
We just had a TV with a DVD player. We got 10 movies at the library every other week, 9 educational ones, 1 fun one. Those were the options.
Yep.
And also they never got to pick what we were watching when. Why? Because if they did, there was a meltdown. So we have to increase the structure to a place where behavior is pretty predictable. And then the more structure you have, the more nurture you have to have. So if you're going to have a very structured home, then you also have to spend a lot of time enjoying your kids, a lot of time connecting with your kids. So it's a huge, it's a big commitment. It's a big commitment to try to change some of these patterns of behavior, because you can't rush attachment. You can't rush learning, especially in a stressed out brain. You actually have to slow it down for the child to learn anything. And so everything just takes time.
Well, and I like that idea, the more consistent. I mean, and I think when we talk to parents about consistency, we're talking about like what things you allow or not allow. And I think, yes, that is part of it, but it's also about managing all these additional pieces. Like, yes, the neighbor kids can do this, but in our house, we do it like this. And I think kids can handle being disappointed. And I think that is very hard for us. Like as parents, we don't want our kids to be in distress, but what we, I think oftentimes don't realize is that they're still going to be in distress, but part of what we have to do is teach them how to tolerate that distress.
Yes. And kids are always more distressed if things are maybe an option than if they are not an option at all. And we know this from research, right? Like intermittent reinforcement is actually the most reinforcing, meaning you sometimes say yes and you sometimes say no. For our kids, they have to have a clear no. And then they can rest in the safety of that. So like boundaries are really important, and they're also really hard to set with our kids. So I get that. They also, come with a lot of fights on the front end to get to a place where it's really established. But like for our kids, another boundary that was just a clear no was no phones. Like just no, like I'm not even going to talk about this, right? I don't believe in arguing with dysregulated children. You set the standard and you set the thermostat for the home. And then, you're right. It's okay if they're unhappy or disappointed, if you know that the decision you're making is an active intention to bless your child.
Yeah. Man, phones are a whole thing. I think we could go down a whole conversation around that one.
For these kids, it is the unraveling. The more trauma impacted your child is, and you hand them I have seen, yes, it is the unraveling. So I just, just telling you guys that.
Yes. No, I appreciate it. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So one of the things that I hear in my practice for families that have adopted kids is like to know how to talk about their history, right? Talking about their family of origin or their adoption story. I mean, what advice do you have around this conversation or multiple conversations? Because it's not like you just talk about it once, once you're engaging this and then we're done. But what advice do you have around like what things are appropriate to talk about? What is helpful information?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I strongly believe that we cannot protect a child from something they experienced. We can only help them organize that experience. And we know that experiences live in the body and in the brain, right? We know this. So to keep that information from them is very dysregulating to a child. Now, I know parents, they think they're protecting their children by not telling them stressful parts of their story, when actually then the child is just more distressed, because then there's just this sense of impending doom without an understanding of why.
Yeah.
So I really recommend doing story work with your kids. And I do that with a lot of kids and a lot of parents that work with me, and we kind of do a timeline. But basically all information you have should be available to your children.
Okay.
And the only exception to that, or my only exception to that, would be in a situation where the child does not have an understanding of sex or consent or things like that. Then at those children, I would say we would wait to tell them about incest. We would wait to tell them about rape. We would wait to tell them things that they don't have the capacity to organize and understand until they do have that capacity. And then we deliver that information immediately. But like a lot of parents don't tell their kids that they have all these siblings. And that, again, it's their story. They have a right to it. They might have experienced those siblings in the womb, the voices, the presence, or it might be something where birth parents are not raising any of their children. And so that story can be really validating to the child, saying it's not just you. Because children always feel like it's just them.
Sure.
They do. That's just the sense they make of the world, is I was bad. That's why they didn't want me. And so when they start understanding, oh no, I had 8 other brothers and sisters, none of them are with my birth mom or dad, then they start having a little more compassion for themselves. And so, but regardless, children deserve the information that brought them into the world, right? They deserve the first few chapters of their life, and protecting them from it is going to lead to a huge sense of betrayal. And that sense of betrayal will come between the ages of 11 and 14. So you don't want to wait longer. You really don't want to wait longer, because it can be that sense of resentment and betrayal can be huge. Like I've known adult adoptees that have just stopped speaking to their parents altogether because of it, because they were withholding information.
Yeah, so hard. And I think it's so complex, because you think, I don't want to hurt my kids, but understanding that the things that they have experienced or gone through, there's some knowledge of that, even if they didn't have the words to express it, but it could create more understanding, and we can do it in a way that is child appropriate, right? For their age, to understand what had happened. And then we can, as they mature the story, right? But it's not that we're withholding information. We're
right. Yeah. And I even have, like, let me see, like I have this, there's, there, like you said, child appropriate things. So I have a birth mom who's pregnant, and I have a white one as well. But anyways, there's a baby inside of her with an umbilical cord and a placenta. And we talk about how, and this is, when I'm explaining it to a kid under the age of 10, I always use this, because we talk about how everything birth mom drinks, the baby drinks. Everything birth mom eats, the baby eats. Everything birth mom feels, the baby feels. And so, yes, these age-appropriate tools are really important for kids to understand how and why, because they do understand that they're not as happy as other kids. They do understand that they're in trouble more. They do understand that they don't trust their mom and dad or adults or authority figures. And that makes life hard for them. So if I can go back to, this is why, honey, because somebody did betray you. Somebody did break your little heart. And now it's hard for you to trust other mommies. In your baby brain, you didn't understand that one mommy did this and one mommy didn't. And I do also, for young children, it's very important to have a different term for birth mom than everyday mom. Now you can, because kids will naturally just combine the two moms. And one of the things that we do in story work is we separate the two moms so that the child can understand where the hurt happened and the healing, and where the healing can come, or where the trust can come. And this is not to bash birth moms. Has no intention of that whatsoever, but just helping the child understand who did what so that they can move forward with their lives. Because otherwise and it's normal for an attachment challenged kid to really push away their adoptive mom. Why? Because that's where the wounding happened. And if you don't explain that's where the wounding happened, then they don't understand. They really just don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so helpful. Okay. So speaking of differences, right, in families and how, there's birth mom and then there's the mom that's raising you now and putting those differences, but there can also be differences like cultural or religious or socioeconomical, racial, just family differences that can happen. How do adoptive parents navigate that piece? Like, what advice do you have around?
Yeah. There's so much research showing that if you are raising a child of another ethnicity, they will do best if they are not just exposed, but surrounded by people of their ethnicity. Or if that's not possible, and sometimes it isn't. Sometimes, I've had kids that they come from, let's say, from the Philippines or someplace that's not a typical place to adopt children from, and there's no Filipino community. Well, then we know that those kids do better if they're surrounded by diversity. So sometimes you're not going to have the exact fit, but it's still really important because you want your children to see mirrors of themselves, and you want them to see you as their everyday mom and dad love and respect adults who look like them. And I'm talking about, like, if you answer these questions, like, who do you love, who do you worship with, and who do you travel with? Like, I'm talking about the big things. Who do you have holidays with? If they don't have people that look like them at the holiday table, then that becomes a big issue as our kids grow up. It really does. So it's really important to develop those relationships. And I have a lot of parents tell me, but I'm uncomfortable. And then I challenge them to remember that is how their children feel when they're the only ones of color in the room. Like, why can't we be uncomfortable for our children? Like, we should be willing to do that, right? We chose them. They didn't get a choice in the matter. So yeah, I mean, and honestly, if you are blessed with a diverse community, you know what I'm talking about. We need each other, particularly in today's world. Like, things are becoming more and more aggressive and more divided. Your children need adults in their lives who experience the world the way they do. And raising 2 African-American children, I can say their experience is very different than mine. And I'm so thankful they have adults in their life that know exactly how they're feeling and experiencing the world.
Yeah. That's profound. Thank you. Yes. I think do you have advice on how to cultivate that?
Well, it depends on the culture that you are adopting out of, the culture or ethnicity, because there's different strategies, I think, for if you are a church-going family, I think church is a great place to get started, just because there's a natural built-in community and activities. So that's probably the easiest way. But then also look at your kids' school systems. Like, we picked our house based on the fact that our kids' elementary school was 50 to 60% minority. We picked our neighborhood based on the fact that it was Hispanic and Black. We would go to the parks. You have to be purposeful to keep your life diverse. You're not just going to all of a sudden like fall into a situation that is just perfectly comfortable and wonderful. You have to pursue those relationships. And that's what we did. We just decided to have somebody over from church every week until we found our people. And we attended the same church for 20 years. And then we actually recently moved, so we're not going to that church anymore. But yeah, I mean, I can remember when my kids were like 12 or something, I guess I'd done a really good job of exposing them to people of other groups, because they were like, do you even like white people, Mom? Because all our friends that came over were Hispanic or Black, and my husband's Hispanic. And but it just made me laugh. I was like, oh yeah, we like all people. We just,
yes.
But like, when we got to choose to socialize, we put ourselves in places where our kids were part of the majority.
Yeah. Yeah. That can be so important. Just feel like a place of belonging.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Especially I mean, it's just so important in a divided world for your kids to see you loving adults who look like them. It's very affirming to your children. Defending adults who look like them. It's very affirming to your children. They're paying attention, y'all. They're paying attention to what you say and what you watch and who you agree with. And that's really hurtful as they get older.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to kind of the beginning when we talked about the challenges. When would we say, I heard you say like, it's helpful to reach out to somebody who understands trauma, somebody who understands adoption, but when do we know that our kid might need support? So like, do we assume that kids that are adopted should be in therapy or have some type of a network of professionals, or when do we decide, or how do we support them in that way?
Yeah. If our children are struggling learning and or playing, okay. And so then I would say that you just need to earlier than later, tap into that. And then also, if one of our children is in crisis and the other child is disappearing into the furniture, disappearing into perfectionism or good behavior or not causing waves, then we need to be on top of that too. Because again, we have to make sure every child in the family is equally important. And so what does this mean for this child? That they never want to have friends over? Yikes, right? That they never want to, I mean, that tells us a lot of information. So I think, personally, I wish that I had immediately sought out somebody who understood our situation. But it took me years to find that person, and I had to go to Texas. So it's hard to find the right professionals. But if I had found, I would have gone immediately. I think it's better to be safe and go to somebody that you know knows what they're talking about and isn't going to minimize your concerns. And then it is to wait 7 or 8 years until you're positive, right? Like there is something to say of just having peace of mind. And I have clients that I see about twice a year and their kids are doing great, but we go over those things that they say, okay, is this normal, or do I need to worry? Do I need to offer support here? And it's just helpful to have someone else telling you, yes, we're doing the right thing. Yes, we're still okay. I wouldn't intervene at this point, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Love it. Dr. Melody, this has been such an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for being here today, but also just like the amazing work that you're doing in our world.
Thank you. It was so fun to talk to you.
Thanks again, Dr. Melody. That was such a wonderful and supportive, helpful conversation, and also just a realistic conversation about the challenges of adoption. We so appreciate your lens and your knowledge, and you're willing to help support us in this journey. So thank you. And thank you for showing up to support your adoptive children and people that you love who have adopted kids. I think this has been such an important conversation. Please take a moment to subscribe to our show if you would on the platform that you listen. That will help you to know when new episodes come up so that you can be updated on our new material. We release episodes every Tuesday and would love for you to join us. With that, I will say thank you again so much for your time. Please like and subscribe to our show. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And please keep the emails coming with future topic suggestions to accidentalexperts@gmail.com. Have a wonderful day. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.